is Lynn Parker from GreenRubino. And the reason I don't know how to pronounce that is because she just sold her firm to it. So, congratulations.
Thanks for inviting me. Aaron invited me, and I'm glad to be here. I love to talk about branding, and I also like to talk about my own entrepreneurial journey because it's not a straight line. And what I think is really, I've been a mentor to the MBA program for 10 and 11 years, and what I love is, you know, these fresh-faced, you know, MBA people going, okay, what's the straightest line between here and there? And I go, well, life is not a straight line. It goes like this. And so, with your permission, I'll tell you a little bit about my journey, and then I'll talk a little bit about branding, and then we'll open up for questions. Does that sound good?
Sounds great.
Okay, great. I came to entrepreneurism very late in life, when I was 38 years old. I was bored. I was working in advertising and public relations, and I went to my boss, who I had a great relationship with, and I said, I won't be here in a year. I don't know what I'll be doing, but I won't be here. And he said, let's talk. And that's when we decided to spin off our own agency and go into something that back in those dark ages, which was 1994, maybe before many of you were born, to start a branding agency. And this was when branding was not what it is today. People didn't talk about it. People didn't know about it. They knew what strong brands were, but they didn't know how to create them, and there was very, very little content about branding. So I'm an incredible optimist, and I think you have to be an incredible optimist. My husband always says, pessimists have a more reliable view of reality. And I'm like, well, I don't care. Like, to me, that's irrelevant, because I'm a great believer in that if you have, you know, think it's going to work out, it usually does. And so I think you have to just take a leap of faith. So I took a leap of faith when I was 38 years old. I had twin 8-year-olds. My husband was in college at the time. And I thought, well, let's see, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? Because it's a very low startup cost for doing what we were going to do. Starting a marketing firm, you know, you need a little bit of equipment and an office, and that's about it. And so I said, well, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? Well, we could be 6 months down the road, and I'll be $20,000 in debt. And I thought, I could handle that worst case scenario. So knowing that there, you know, who knew if it was going to work out or not, I could handle the worst thing that could possibly happen. And so we started out by finding an advertising agency and becoming their like in-house PR people, and they gave us free rent for us doing some PR for them. And we started doing volunteer work for the associations and the industries we were interested in, and that's how we got to know people. And by month 4, we were profitable, and which was pretty exciting. And we were probably 50% public relations and 50% brand strategy, which is really what we wanted to do. But we were known in the industry for our PR capabilities, so we knew we had to have that as a basis. And we started our company, and just 2 people. And by month 4, we were profitable, and then we started hiring more people, and then we got our own office, and then, you know, it just kept going like that. And we were very, very excited about branding because we saw its potential. We'd been working with Hewlett-Packard LaserJet printers, and Hewlett-Packard had come to us in '93 and said, we're moving to a brand management model, so we thought, oh, we better get smarter than our client really, really fast. So that's why we started just learning everything we could about branding. And so we started out, and we started talking to other people about what we were doing. And what was funny was we'd go to an advertising agency, we'd tell them all about branding, and they would start branding. And then we thought, oh, we have to protect this. So we decided to write a book. And so back in 1994, we wrote our first book on branding called Integrated Branding. And our whole thesis, and this was new at the time, so you got to reel yourself back in time and go, really? Was that a brand isn't just communications. A brand is something that's lived within the company and is at the heart of the company and is manifested through your products, through your people, and through your communications. And this was a big idea back then. So we wrote a book about it, and it became a bestseller, and it actually launched some of our thought leadership. So that's what we started off by. So does anyone here, is anyone old enough to remember the dot-com crash? Well, leading up, we were very much invested in high tech. We did mostly high tech PR branding. And there was a time in the dot-com craziness, you couldn't hire fast enough, you couldn't grow fast enough. I swear to God, this is a true story. We hired our meter reader. He came in and he said, to read the meter, and he said, what kind of business is this? And we told him, he goes, well, that's what I studied in college, but I couldn't find a job. And we sat down and had an interview right then and hired him on the spot. That's what it was like back at this crazy, crazy growth time. It was also a time where it was very frustrating to be a marketer, because we go in with these great ideas for how to add value, customer value, and on the messaging around that, how you build that over time. And all of our clients were watching what was getting funded by Wall Street and wanting to be that. And then wanting to be that. And the problem with that strategy is you're always behind the curve, and you're never actually building real value. You're just messaging something that isn't real. So we were watching all of our clients go, you just don't get it. When we're going, no, you got to add real value. And they're like, no, you don't. You just have to message right, or have the right URL, or whatever. And we were watching that happen, and I knew the crash was coming before it came, because I was watching so much money being poured into companies that didn't have any actual value. They were not providing actual value to any customers. It was terrifying. So we were 2 offices and 32 people, and we had a pretty hard year back in 2001. There was, first of all, we had one of our offices was in Soto, right across the street from Starbucks. Does anyone remember what happened in February of 2001? There was a big earthquake, and our building got yellow tagged after we had put $100,000 worth of tenant improvements in it. So that was number one. Then the dot-com crash started happening, and we had clients walk away from $40,000, $80,000 invoices they just never paid. It just stopped. New clients became impossible to get. 9/11. Business stopped. It was like, oh my God. So we went from 2 offices to 1. We went from 32 people and had to do layoffs at 3 different times. This was a stupid thing. Now learn this from me very, very carefully. This was the stupidest thing I did as an entrepreneur. I said, I'm an optimist, right? It's going to get better. So we borrowed money to keep our employees too long. We should have made deeper cuts earlier, faster, instead of betting on the come, because we bet on the come, and the come didn't happen for a long time. So anyway, what happens when you go from 32 people to 7 people is you get a really strong team. There are only A players left when that happens. So we rebuilt our company after the dot-com crash. And the first thing we said was, well, technology, which was 90% of our business, is no longer, we're going to diversify. We learned the diversification lesson, okay? That's lesson number 2, diversification. We're not going to be in one industry. And we looked at our technology industry, and we had some clients that were technology for healthcare, and we thought, I bet healthcare is going to be, around for a while. So let's become healthcare specialists. So we started our healthcare practice in 2001. And let me tell you, that saved us. That was the smartest thing we did. So if the stupidest thing we did was to borrow money to keep employees on too long and then ultimately have to do another round of layoffs, which was incredibly bad for morale, and then another one which is incredibly bad for morale. The smartest thing we ever did was move into healthcare. And so we started working with Group Health. We worked with Mayo Clinic. We worked with Microsoft in Health. We worked with Philips Medical. We worked with GE Medical. We worked with Swedish Medical. So anyway, we started building this healthcare expertise. And what happens is, because healthcare is so arcane a business, the more you know about it, the more other people want to work with you. And so that part of our business is just built and built and built. And that really was what we became known for, was brand strategy in the healthcare space. So that brings us to last couple of years, recession again. We weathered the first year of the recession really well. All the lessons we learned from the dot-com crash, cut fast, have low overhead all the time, sock things away for a rainy day, be out there doing promotion when nobody else is. All these things that we had learned from the first time, we applied, and we weathered the first 2 years of the recession really well. And then the recession started to hit us as well. And so we added new products, and we added new services, and we did more thought leadership, and we did everything we knew, but we weren't growing. And by this time, we had 3 partners, and Joe and myself were kind of the older people in the trio, and then my third partner, Brianna, we had nurtured her from a 22-year-old. She worked for us for 8 years, became our partner for 4 years, and she was just great, and she needed a bigger platform. So we went out to the market and looked for people who wanted to buy us. And I just went through that process. So the last year was spent going out looking for suitors, packaging ourselves up for that process, finding a really good partnership. I'm really happy where we've landed, and then going through the process of selling ourselves. So that happened 6 weeks ago. It's very weird. I ran a business for 19 years where I was queen of the world, and you don't know how much authority and power you have until you don't have it. And you know that that's going to happen, and you choose it because you want to do that, because you want an exit strategy. And guess what? I have a 3-year earn-out, so I'm there for 3 years. But let me tell you, being an employee sucks. It's so interesting. It's like, I'll have a client and I'll want to do work for them and I'll give them an estimate and they'll say that's too expensive. In the olden days, I could discount it. Now I have to go ask permission to discount it. And they'll go, well, is this client worth it to us in the long run? And all of a sudden, they're using filters for decision making that are not my value system. And I get to just do it. So I love to work with nonprofits. I love to work with nonprofits. It's really, really fun. And they really listen and they really apply what you say. And you make really a big difference in their organizations. They have no nonprofit rates. I discounted my rates 25% for nonprofits. And I can't do that now. So all of a sudden, it's like, oh. I write a column for the Puget Sound Business Journal about entrepreneurism. Which now I'm going to be writing about marketing because I'm no longer an entrepreneur. But I wrote my last article for it's called Startup Strategies. I wrote my last article about what it was like to work for the man and report to my person I brought up, I mentored since she was 22. So now she's my boss, right? That's so weird. And I wanted to describe kind of how weird it was. And so, is anyone here familiar with TSP reports? Office space, anyone see office space? Okay, so anyway, or TPS reports, whatever it is. So I wrote about, now I have to fill out TPS reports, and the man tells me what to do, and I wrote this article, and I thought, oh, I better make sure GreenRubino's okay with me writing this article, because I mentioned them. I took it to my boss, and actually I took it to her boss, and I said, courtesy, here's the article I've done in the Puget Sound Business Journal, which I've been writing this column for 5 years. He said, well, great, we'll send it out for copy editing. Okay. Came back and he goes, I really don't like how you articulated us as the man. And I said, well, the man would say that. And there was like, the eyes got big and I went, oh, I have to I gotta learn how to bite my tongue because I'm an employee now. It's really a different way of being in the world, and I have to get used to it. So anyway, so that's my journey. And I'd love to take questions about that now, and then I can talk about branding. Thoughts, questions?
As somebody who still works for the man, often struggle with sort of exactly what you're describing, like having being micromanaged almost by for this, there's a
Yeah.
process for that you have to follow.
Yeah.
And it's not just like, ideally I would just want my judgment to be trusted and whatever. So like, do you, I guess you're only 6 weeks into it, so you
Yeah.
might not know yet, but do you plan to like fight that in a way, or try to like make it so that your working life is better, or do you plan to just sort of like try to get through the 3 years? And then
I don't think I'm going to fight process. I'm not a process person. I'm an anti-process person. I hate process. But guess what? Okay, this is really embarrassing. The processes work. This company is so much more profitable than we ever were, and they know how to price, and they know how to say no, and they know what business to take and what business not to take. And I just wanted people to love me, and I wanted to add value, and I wanted to have fun. And the profit conversation was kind of down here for me. I mean, I needed to make money, but it wasn't like the goal. And now I work for a company where it's the goal, and it's like, I have something to learn here, and that's useful. So I'm learning how to be more profitable than I ever was before. You know, when they told us what their profitability expectations for our P&L were, I was like, you know, I think we did that 1 year, you know? And so in the negotiations, I was like really trying to get that pushed down because we don't make a bonus until we meet that profitability level. I'm like, there's no way. And they said, oh yeah, you'll do this. Well, we've been into it six weeks, and I don't have any figures yet, the hard and fast figures. But I think we're going to exceed their profitability goals for us in month 1. So, you know, I'm humbled here.
So if I go start a business, how do I find the consultants that are really good but don't know that they can make how much profit they have in
Wait, can you say it again a little louder?
How do I find the cheap, excellent consultants that you were before you were?
You have to find people that are in the business not to get rich but to have fun. And that was both my partner and I were all about interesting work with interesting people and thought leadership. Like that's where the juice is for us. So you got to find out what the juice is for the organization. And you know, clearly we were, you know, I don't get to work with some of the tiniest little companies anymore, which I loved because the lever that you have with them is so big and you can see the changes so quickly. I don't get to do that anymore. So you know, a lot to learn and a lot to lose. Yes?
I was wondering, can you elaborate how healthcare was a good business decision
Sure.
versus other sectors?
Sure. So, you know, we kind of picked it randomly. We didn't like do an analysis of, you know, but there was this sense that, you know, there's, you know, year over year, we knew what we were paying more and more for healthcare every year. And we could see that sector just growing and growing and growing. And we knew that we had an expertise in it that we could leverage, so that's why we picked it. And it's proven itself to be very good because there's a lot of money in it. And people will spend money to be well that they won't spend any other way because, you know, it's so critical. And because it was so arcane and there were so many layers to it. I mean, I can tell you things about healthcare reform and capitation and yada, yada, yada that, you know, would make your ears bleed. But that they reward people who make that investment in healthcare, and they want to work with healthcare specialists. So I think it's really hard to break into that sector from the outside. But why was it good? Because people spend money. Any more questions about my journey? Because that's the fun part.
You know, on the same,
Sure.
sort of thread. So how did you use your specialized knowledge to leverage against others? Any specifics? I know you talk about the capitation structure,
Yeah,
etc.
yeah.
Anything else? How you use that because it's so layered? How did you use it against others?
Well, because we were pioneers in branding strategy, and because healthcare had a lot of money to spend, they were early adopters of branding, especially because they were very commoditized. I mean, it's like, oh, we have high-quality healthcare. You know, it's like, where's the nuance in the conversation that is actually compelling to customers? And so we actually had something they really needed, which was really figuring out how to be more attractive in a differentiated way to consumers. So our first big healthcare client was group health. And if any of you have a long-term memory, group health was not always considered as good as it is today. And when we first started working for them, the percentage of people that said group health is for somebody like me was in the double digit. It was like 18% or something. It was a very low number. They were losing numbers. And when and they were kind of being broad brush tarred with the whole HMO means you get bad care kind of conversation. And we helped them reposition around coordinated care. And we've actually done like 3 different rounds of branding with them over the 11 years we worked with them to go from coordinated care to personal health engagement, you know, just really taking the innovation and all those things and helping them look at their entire organization from the filter of their brand. So part of their brand is that a welcoming kind of personality piece. And when, because they're a co-op and they're owned by members, they did put a lot of money in the olden days into their facilities. And so you would go into the waiting room and there would be very old magazines and there would be stuffing coming out of your chair. Now, what they thought consumers were thinking was, boy, they're saving all the money for my care. And the consumer's thinking, they can't fix the chair, or are they going to fix me? And we helped them see those kinds of things, and so they did an entire rework of their waiting rooms based upon our brand strategy advice, for example.
So based on that, how did you initially approach them and actually have them or convince them that you actually know what you're doing and that they should invest in you?
So much of the reason people work with us, so there's very few brand strategists in the world. We never ever said, oh, we're graphic artists that also do branding. We were very specifically targeting brand strategy. And so if you look in the world of brand strategy, there's advertising companies that say they do it, and there's graphic designers that say they do it, but there's very few strategy companies that say they do it. So that was one thing we had. Another thing was we were always at the forefront of thought leadership. So we wrote books, we spoke, we wrote articles. We always were out there showing people the next thing in brand strategy. So that was the way we got a lot of our leads. We were on the board, one of my partners was on the board of an association, and he found the opportunity through that. And then we pitched it, and the rest is history.
What were some of the biggest wins for you that marked you as pioneers in brand strategy?
Well, we've written 5 books on branding. Branding for Real, Brand Driven, Integrated Branding, Create a Brand That Inspires. Oh, and one on entrepreneurship, The Reluctant Entrepreneur. So, so that was part of it. Because we were out speaking, we met people at other companies that were out speaking, so that's how we got the Mayo Clinic opportunity. So we got to do messaging for Mayo Clinic, which was really, really exciting. And this was at a time when Mayo Clinic was getting, they had the highest brand of any healthcare organization, but they were starting to get equal parity of quality from the regional centers of excellence, like the Cleveland Clinic. And they were expanding into places like Scottsdale, and they needed to have better messaging for people who hadn't experienced the Mayo Clinic brand. So we came up with messaging, we went out and tested it at focus groups, and then helped them figure out how to articulate their difference in a way that people could hear and not just think was marketing. So that was a big win. Okay, you want to talk about branding?
Yeah.
Great, let's talk about branding. So I come from short, fat, Jewish, balding, peasant stock from the old country, right? The joke in my family is that we have high self-esteem for no apparent reason. When my great-grandfather came over to escape the pogroms and, from Lithuania back in whenever, he came with the proverbial $2 in his pocket. and a name of someone who ran a factory and presented himself for a job. And the factory owner said, looked at my short, fat, dumpy, balding, you know, I think he was all of 5 feet tall, ancestor, and said, we're not hiring. And my great-grandfather was watching 6 strong men trying to move some equipment to another room. And he said, if I can move that into the other room, can I have a job? And the guy said, you're crazy. Well, my great-grandfather sat down and he wrote a schematic of the machine, and he took it apart piece by piece and labeled each piece and took each piece into the other room and put it back together where it probably worked perfectly. And the factory owner looked at him and he said, you I gotta have. And that's what's called upon us as marketers today, is to get the market to say, you I gotta have. So that's what branding's all about. It's figuring out the actions and behaviors that make people want you. So it used to be in the classical days of marketing was, well, you know, here's our marketing budget, and here's the message we have, and here's our marketing mix of how we're going to push it out. And this was the model, and everybody did it, and it worked until something called the internet came along. And people got bombarded by messages, and we learned to really tune them out. And we learned to only take what we wanted and search for what we wanted. And so pull, instead of push. So instead of taking a message and pushing it out, the world turned around and you have to get pulled. That's why you have to have something that people want to pull. So, you know, this is it. You know, the old days, the message was, I've got the best tires at the best prices. And she's saying, I know, that's why I'm here. I found you on the internet. You know, my social media friends told me about this, or I did Yelps, you know. However people are pulling the information that they actually want is how the world works now. And the marketers that are stuck in the old paradigm of I have a message and I'm pushing it out are not going to be successful. That model is dead. I hereby call it dead. So you got to learn about pull. So then the question is, how do you create pull? And it's very easy to say, you know, build a better mousetrap and they'll be there. That's just a piece of it. Having something people want is only a piece of it. So the first thing is you got to figure out what makes you different, better, compelling. And you really have to figure that out. You can't just go, well, I think it's our quality. No, you have to do research. You have to not be blinded by your own assumptions. You have to talk to your customers and see how they frame your value. You have to really articulate what makes you different and better, and you have to then own that. Okay, so first you got to figure it out. First step, number 1. That's the brand definition process. We do that all the time. That's like our bread and butter work. The second thing is you got to figure out who your best customer is. I can't tell you how many entrepreneurs have said to me, well, we don't want to, you know, target on one audience because that will narrow our market. And well, let me tell you, it's better to have 8% of a really specific market than 0% of a big one. And everyone said, well, I only need 2% of the market. Well, how are you going to get that 2% if you're not compelling people? So you have to really know who your target is, and you've got to meet that target's needs so well that they love you. And that's really the heart of it. You also need to walk in their shoes from their point of view. So I think it's really easy for people to say, oh, we know our customers. But you don't really know your customers. You haven't actually looked at the world from where they stand. You might say, well, we have this great product and it saves you money and that's what we'll tell them. But when you look at it from their point of view, saving money might not be the thing that pulls them. They might talk to their friends and this is what, you know, gets them. So because I just joined a new firm, I have no insurance, right? So I got to figure out a new doctor. And, you know, how do you find a new doctor? Well, you ask your friends, right? And I asked one person, you know, there's this place near me, and I said, oh, is that any good? And she goes, oh yeah, I hear they have the best doctors. Well, that's where I'm going now. You know, I'm not doing a lot of research. I'm not, you know, that's where I'm going now. So you've got to figure out how I make my selection process and intersect with me at the right time and place. So you have to walk through the world from my point of view. So if I'm looking for something on the web, you got to know what words I'm going to put in the Google. You're going to want to know what I do next. You want to know who I ask next. You want to just map that experience out step by step by step, so that you can find good places to intersect with your customers. We worked with a nonprofit, a big nonprofit called Child Fund, and what they do is they sponsor, you sponsor a child in a foreign country, and you basically provide them with food and health care. And when you go to their website, it's all about sponsor a child, sponsor a child, sponsor a child. And when we did this work and walked through the world from their prospect's point of view, we identified one of their key prospects as a mother with young children, maybe 8, 10, excuse me, and who wants to teach them about generosity and how much they have in the world. Well, guess what? There were no tools for that person on their web. Thank you. That is really kind. There were nothing on the web. There wasn't a learn about how to teach your kids about generosity. There was no allowance level sponsorship opportunity. There was no pen pal opportunity for the kids. There were no school kits. They had not done anything that actually addressed the real behaviors of their prospect. And I remember that my client, the light bulb going on, he goes, we invite people to our website, and then we ask them to marry us. Like, there's no courtship process. There's no, here's something of value for you. Here's something else of value for you. Oh, now let's sponsor a child. And, that just brings people along. So you got to understand their experience. You also have to create brand-defining experiences. So this means understanding what makes you different and better, and then creating an experience that makes that pop for people. Anyone here ever gone to a DoubleTree Inn?
Yes.
What happens when you check in?
I don't remember.
Does anyone know?
It's warm cookies.
Ah, they give you a cookie.
That's right.
And do you know what's special about that cookie? It's warm. All of a sudden, you've been traveling and you're tired, and it's like all the love you didn't get from your mother is here in this cookie. They created an emotional, brand-defining experience about, we're going to take care of you, that is unique to them. So that's an example. Okay, so every organization has a brand, whether they manage it or not. It's better if you manage it. And where it lives, where you figure out what your brand stands for, is at the intersection of these 3 circles. So first you got to figure out, what do we do better than anybody else? And then you got to say, what do our customers or clients really care about? And then you got to figure out, what are we willing to own in the marketplace, or what will the marketplace let us own? So you have to really understand the market environment, and then invest in your difference over time so that you're owning it over time. So there's another way to think about where your brand lives. And everybody needs to be both relevant and distinct. So a lot of our clients are neither. You can't help them. A lot of them go, you know what? Our coffee tastes really good. We're a coffee house and we have really great coffee. Well, if I went to a coffee house and I didn't get really great coffee, I would think they failed. It's definitely relevant you have coffee, but it's not distinct. Or you can say, we have the best engineers making our coffee. Well, maybe. But you have to come up with something that's both relevant and distinct. Starbucks did this with their third place, where they said, this is the place where you come, that's not work and not home, to meet people and hang out, and we're going to have music, and we're going to have tea, and we're going to just make that whole experience be your third place. I think the reason Tully's didn't make it, and I hope I'm not stepping on any toes here, was they went into the market and said, we'll just siphon off some of Starbucks' overflow. We'll be like them too. Versus creating their own compelling, distinct, and relevant value prop. So you figure out your brand, right? But now you got to figure out your best customer. And I can't say this hard enough, you have to figure out your primary customer. And you can't say, well, we want to equally focus on this customer and this customer. No, no, you have to say, this is the one that we're going to make their needs met no matter what. Now, we're going to make these other people's needs met too, but that's not going to be our primary focus. Because when you really identify who you're going after, you can then become something that gets pulled. And if you're too scattered, you can't. So the next step in the process is to really understand this person, from what their goals and needs are, what their experience goals are, what they care about. This was a persona we did for a client where, what does she really care about? What is she being measured on? What is she trying to solve for? And the more you know about that, and will know about this person and get in her head, and she's got a name, and she's got kids, and you know about what she does for a hobby. It's like when you really get into that person's brain, you can start actually intersecting with her in a relevant way where you get pulled. So then you do that experience mapping process I alluded to earlier, where you go, okay, here's this case manager person. She's trying to optimize for both cost and care. She's asked to, she's supposed to improve care while driving down costs in her organization. What's the first thing she does when she tries to do that? Oh, she goes to this convention and she talks to these people, and then she looks at these software products, and then she talks to her peer group, and you just walk through the world, and all of a sudden you find out, oh, what she really cares about is X. Maybe another place we could actually get to her is through this third-party software that she cares about more than us, but it's a necessary part, and so now we have a door into her. So there's all these things that happen when you walk through the world from her point of view. This was the website that we created from this process. And what we discovered in walking through the world from her point of view, this was a company that makes care guidelines. It's a database of what you do when you go to the hospital. Mostly payers, like the insurance companies, use this database to figure out what they're actually going to pay for. So did you do the right standard of care? And that's what we'll pay for. They wanted to move into the provider market, so they wanted to get doctors to use this product too. But they knew that the doctors would think, oh, it's just what the payers use. I'm not sure this is a product for me. So we needed to make sure on their website that they had products for both payers and providers. And they were about the conversations in between, so that the doctors are getting compensated for the care they're providing, and the payers are paying for the right care, and they're both agreeing. So that we position this product as a way to facilitate the conversations that happen between payers and providers. I have one last example. I brought in one that's really commodity, so that you can see how branding really has to work even in commodity situations. I can't tell you how many times clients go, well, you can't brand us, we're commodity. Well, I'm sorry, we can brand anything, because they can brand salt, right? You can buy salt that's like 20 times more expensive than whatever. Morton's has a 14% over just generic, so profit over generic. So you know that you can brand anything, because that's salt, right? Salt. So point-to-point is a transportation logistics. They ship stuff, point A to point B. How do you brand that, right? When they came to us, they said, well, we want to get more business in the event space, so they wanted to help companies who were showing at conventions ship all of their gear there and get into that business. And they said, and really we help people save money. And we went, because guess what? Everybody helps people save money, right? It's not the lead message. It's not how you tell people you're different. They also had, for many years, had created this icon around this this pig that was about saving money. And they said, we want to keep using our little pig. Okay, so what do? Well, we first do our brand process, where we do the research, and we find out what their customers care about, we find out what they're really good at. And these people were really kind of edgy. They were, they love the roller derby, and the guy who owns the company has, tattoos everywhere, and they're kind of really out there, but they're also obsessive about freight forwarding. I mean, who knew you could be obsessive about freight forwarding, right? So with our brand, when we uncovered it, and branding is a revealing process, it's not an overlay process. You don't say, it would be good if you guys were this way. No, you have to really find out what's there. They were obsessive freight geeks. And their personality was obsessive, irreverent, grounded, and creative. And then we talked about how you want an obsessive freight geek worrying about your freight. Okay, so now we've figured out what their brand is. What's the brand defining experience? Well, we did the experience mapping, and they wanted to target, their key persona that they were trying to target was a marketing manager at a games company who was responsible for trade shows. So what the brand defining experience was, we took the pig and we transformed it. And the first thing we did was we turned him into bacon. And we bought pounds of artisanal bacon from the woolery, I guess, anyway, and had them shipped to their 50 top targets, so these marketing managers. And when you get a pound of bacon, and it comes and it's fresh and it's cold, and you see that there was some amount of logistical things that had to make that happen, you pay attention. And guess what? Everybody likes bacon except for somebody. I know. But, you know, it's a pretty popular thing. So the next thing we did was we went to their trade shows where they were actually at the booths, and we brought them a bacon-themed trade show survival kit. So everything in here smells or tastes like bacon, and we presented it and talked about what we did. And then the third flight of this thing was we sent them all, we said, can pigs fly? Well, an obsessive freight geek can figure out how. And we sent these little flying pigs. And guess what? The pig is now transformed from being about low cost or saving you money. And it's become an emblematic brand-defining experience that really builds up to obsessive freight geeks. So that's how we did it for one small company. And so what can you do? So remember, think about your customer and make whatever you do relevant to them. That might mean when you're designing a website that you don't just go, well, here's all the information we want to push out. You start with, what are they trying to achieve and how can we help them do it? And that might be their first experience when they write on their website, is you helping them achieve something they're trying to do versus selling your product. Meet me where they are. Guess what? Everyone's moving to their phones. Everyone's moving. It's really interesting. As an old person, I was listening to the radio, and they were interviewing young people and asking how much time they spent online. And that question was meaningless. So get that. There is no not online anymore. They're always online. So meet them where they are. So if they attend meetups, go to the meetup. If they play this game, go and be there. I mean, it's like wherever they are, be there. I worked with one group of health insurance companies, and they were very much in the marketing model of pushing out. And when they did this experience mapping process, because they all wanted to target the healthy 24-year-old, and they went, well, okay, what is the first thing he does? Well, his dad tells him he's got to have health insurance, right? Because his dad doesn't want to go bankrupt if the kid gets sick. So what's he going to do? He goes online, and he looks for like some kind of matrix of opportunities. And none of these people were online. None of these people had invested in being in the shopping carts, They hadn't figured out that this is where this kid was going to go looking for his health insurance. They were, they weren't meeting him where he lived. People don't read anymore. I was a journalist, that's very sad. But people don't read anymore, so use visuals. And make yourself stand out with a brand-defining experience. That's it.